Welcome back, everyone. Rhythm Rose Cafe is in full swing again. Sorry for confusing you last week. Caught a little bit of the bug, and I was a miserable human being. More miserable than I usually am, let's put it that way. We were trying to come up with, the theme last week was mine, my host. Our title was Fool on the Hill. And over the last couple of weeks, we've heard a lot of information regarding our former president, Mr. Biden, and I thought it should be a topic of discussion, not so much as to his medical condition, because of course nobody wishes cancer on anyone. That's not what we're here to talk about. I do wish people well. I've had a family member going through some serious, we don't know if they're serious because we can't find out what's wrong with the poor lady. But in any event, there is nothing fun about even people talking about the C word. So, but what is a little discerning is how long he's known it, when did he know it, and the games that people play to try to stay in power. And I think that's more of the discussion that I would like to have today versus talking about, nitpicking about him or this or that or anything else. So with that, it was determined that Biden has a form of colon cancer, even though one of the medical experts on CNN, MSNBC, PMSNBC is what Rush Limbaugh used to call it, agreed that his medical condition had to have been around for a while. Okay, it wasn't anything that could have just suddenly came upon him, the type of prostate cancer that he was going through. I know some people that have prostate cancer, they've gone through the tests and the batteries and they go, yeah, it's probably not something that popped up. He knew it. All right, so the question comes in is, should they have disclosed it? Do you think they should have disclosed it?
Yeah, he's president. He's president. We need to know. We need to know everything about him. Okay, we need to know if he has tendencies to have a foot fetish with foreign women. Okay, we need to know that.
Are you going back to Russian collusion? Is that just to throw that one in there, Danny?
We're going to need to know everything about him because our national interests are at stake. We didn't know much about Reagan until after the fact. We didn't know Nancy was the real power behind the presidency.
Yeah,
and
fair enough.
I was really aghast about that. I don't know what kind of adjective to use, except to say that it made me feel uneasy that Nancy Reagan was the president. We didn't know about it, okay? And it's not so much that she was the president, okay? I'm not trying to be misogynistic here. Mm-hmm. Her tendencies to rule revolved around the horoscope pages of the, okay. Well, I mean, am I wrong? I mean, that was the take on it. Was it a good day today? Well, I don't know. I got to consult the is Venus in recession or whatever the hell Venus does.
You know, with Biden, he didn't do the Democratic Party any favors.
Nothing.
And
how so?
Well, by keeping this you know, by wanting to be president, by wanting to run again. He should have 2 years ago. He should have said, "I'm not going to run again. I'm too old. And we got to start looking for the next person." In fact, the day that Joe Biden was elected was
You
when
should
the
have said it,
Democrats
right.
started looking for the person
Right.
for the next election, and the Democrats blew that. But Biden was no help here, and he's going to go down. It's going to hurt him in history because, from my point of view, he was a pretty capable president, and he did a lot of good
Several
things for
things
people like
happened.
me. But now he's going to be the guy, you know, that hid his condition, and he wanted to run when he should have wanted to step down.
But the Democrats backed him. I mean, they backed him through the primaries. They kind of chased everybody else away.
Who did they have? Newsom? Harris? The Democrats still don't have anybody.
There were people in the race. Kamala was in the race.
You know, I pray every night that
Booker was in the race. There was.
Booker didn't stand a chance.
I'm not saying that he did. What I'm saying is the Democratic Party, if they knew of his problems,
didn't. Yeah,
and
they
his
did.
problems weren't just the cancer. Now let's make sure we're all
No, he
talking
was having short-term memory loss.
as your people say, the guy was ubatse.
Yeah,
Okay, the guy
ubatse.
was losing his mind. Okay,
Well, he
one
wasn't
could-
losing
He
his
wasn't
mind.
losing
Come
his
on.
mind, but he was
It was slowly slipping down the
he was
slope.
slipping down.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was more than slow. I mean,
Well,
as one comedian
Nick-
put it, he would walk around the stage like a Roomba. He'd go boom, and he'd come back this way and stuff. The guy
No,
couldn't.
he didn't do that,
He
but he
Yes,
was
he did.
slowing down.
Yes, he did.
I'll
He
tell
was
you
slowing
what.
down, and it was
he's-
a loss for words.
He's 2 years
sometimes.
older than me. Okay, I watch TV. I see a commercial. It has a nice sandwich on it or some other stuff. I say, I'm hungry. I'm gonna get that stuff that I thought I was gonna eat in the refrigerator. I get up from the couch in the front room. I walk 44 feet to the kitchen. I open up that refrigerator door and I stare at it and I say, "What the hell am I here for? What am I looking at? You know, why am I at the refrigerator?" And I close the door and I creep back to the couch and I sit down. It's just a natural progression of getting
Danny,
old.
The fact that you are communicating like this in a setting like this, and you're only 2 years, whatever,
Difference.
of him.
Right.
Okay.
So there's no doubt that he should have been stepping down. There's no doubt that the Democrats were not prepared for this, and that the Democrats didn't handle it properly. But they were faced with a crisis. But they should have been standing up to Biden 3 years ago. They should have told him 4 years ago, "You're getting one term."
And they should have been grooming somebody.
So
why
the
didn't
thing
they?
was
They
that-
should have been grooming somebody.
Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Why didn't they?
I don't know why
They don't
didn't.
have strong leadership, and they still don't. They relied on Nancy Pelosi, and Pelosi was too preoccupied with other stuff. Okay, Pelosi is probably the premier tactician in the party. Okay, she's a good tactician because she learned
brings
from
the
her
money.
father.
She brings the money.
She wins a lot.
She brings the money.
Well, that's a technician. You need
Okay.
that.
Well,
okay.
you could, anybody could be a tactician if you got money to throw around. Okay, I mean, you want to
No,
get,
you
you
had
want
the
to get
guy-
a good table at the restaurant. You could be a real good tactician with
It's
the money.
not
and get-
true. You had the guy from Heinz, the guy that owned Heinz. Okay, what's his name? The
Oh
Mormon.
no, his wife owned it.
Or his wife. Well, same thing. Okay.
Carrie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kerry. He had money. He had the money that matched Trump's money, and he couldn't go and do anything with it. I mean, it didn't do anything for
If
him.
I can be honest, the last Democratic candidate that I was interested in was Tulsi Gabbard, and she's not even part of the Democratic Party anymore. I think she was running in 2016.
Yeah, until she got
was
shot in
running.
the head, right?
No.
Didn't she get shot? Oh,
No, no,
That was the
no,
other
no,
one that
no,
got shot in the head.
You're thinking of somebody completely different. Yeah.
Kelsey, yeah, she turned Republican, right?
Right.
Or first went independent, and then leaned to the right.
Correct.
Well, that stuff happens, you know. I mean,
So, from people that I know, conservatives that I know, they sit there and they look and they go like, why do people believe what Democrats say anymore? Okay, why? No, and if you take out some major things, okay, you go back to the first election of Trump with the Russian collusion, which was all a farce, and they They hitched their horses to that bandwagon, and they played it out. Yes,
I don't know if it was a farce.
It was a farce. They spent millions and millions of dollars investigating it with the independent counsel who was appointed by a Democrat, and they found absolutely nothing. Okay. They found some ancillary people. You know, Manafort went to jail. The Greek guy went to jail for stuff that was really unrelated to the election. Okay. Then you had the whole Hunter Biden laptop. This is another Russian hoax and stuff, and it turned out that it wasn't. Okay.
What was it?
What
I
do you mean?
never did figure out. What was it?
It
The
was
Hunter
it was
Thompson.
his.
I mean, the Hunter.
It was his
Hunter,
computer.
Biden.
Regardless of what was on it, it was his computer.
Yeah.
Okay. They actually, in a court of law, used the computer to convict him
What
of.
was on it that was controversial?
Well, outside of his drug use and his statements about, you know, his dad being the big man and his whole connection to his father in terms of business dealings and his income tax and things of that nature. The point is the Democrats didn't want to acknowledge the fact that, like, yeah, Hunter's an idiot. Okay, he shouldn't be around his father. He shouldn't be around politics, and they just tried to pass it off that it was another huge, vast right-wing conspiracy. Oh, just like
But the Republicans
just
would
like
not
the
do
Monica
that, right?
Lewinsky, just like the Monica Lewinsky issue
Well, why
was as
why
well.
would this is whataboutism? But why would I believe anything the Republicans say? You
So
gotta, you
That's
gotta,
the
you
problem
gotta-
we're going to
okay,
go down
okay,
to.
so, all
we're going
right,
to go
so
down that
you,
rabbit hole.
you know,
So tell me what.
it
No,
works
we're
both
going down
ways.
the
What?
rabbit hole.
So tell me.
Well, you
tell
got
me
a
you'll put on
president that just
national level.
lies almost every time he opens his mouth. He's lying, and he's starting to look like he's crazy.
24 hours after I'm elected, I will end the war in Ukraine.
Okay.
Yes or no,
Of course.
Counsel?
Is that,
Yes
is that
or
a
no?
lie or is that an embellishment? Is that just
Excuse
No,
me.
come on. I think there's a huge difference. I mean, you
He-
want to point out that
When he
that
was
that's a
at
lie.
West
That'd be
Point,
something-
he said that he rebuilt the armed services. And
Yeah.
he rebuilt them,
Which he didn't. He cut their budget.
which he didn't. And he just lies all the time. I mean, there's so many of them. I could bring in a list here.
Actually,
Are student loans forgiven?
huh?
Are student loans forgiven?
no, the
That was
Supreme
promised.
Court stopped them, right?
Okay.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Did Biden try to do it? Yes or no?
He did. Yeah.
Okay. And who stopped them? The Republican appointed Supreme Court.
Exactly, but isn't Trump trying to
Because
end the war in the Ukraine by having discussions and end things? I mean, it's not like.
Well, wait a minute. Go back to what did Trump do about it? Okay, about the student loans. What did he do? He appointed those Supreme Court justices. How did he?
I don't get your point.
Well,
The point is that
Biden
they
tried
all
to do
lie.
something.
Wait. What did I don't? I don't
Biden
get your
tried to
point.
do something for kids by forgiving the student loan.
He doesn't have the authority.
And that's what the Supreme Court said.
Correct.
So
Even Nancy Pelosi says he can't do that.
So why did, when Trump got in power, why didn't he convince the legislator to change the law so that they would do that?
Why? Why should we
Why should
forgive
he?
student loans?
Okay.
Because a loan never goes unpaid. Somebody has to pay it.
The point here is president.
No, somebody has to pay the loan.
The point
Yeah.
here is president.
We were going to pay the loan.
Who?
The taxpayers.
Correct. So why should the taxpayers pay the loans of students?
For national security.
What?
You want me to give you the big reason why?
Because
How
it's
many-
politically advantageous to do it.
And that's why.
That's what
and
he
that's-
says.
Well,
I
okay.
say it's for
And that's
national
why-
security. Do you want to hear why? I'll give you all kinds of evidence that you won't even dare to refute. How many people live in China? 3 times the population that we have. How many PhDs do they graduate every year? 4 times the number of PhDs compared to everybody we graduate from high school, college, and post-grad. How long is it going to take them with all of that education when they outnumber us 3-1? How long is it going to take them before they surpass us in medicine, science, military, and all the other things that we were superior, make America great again? That's what we were great about. We had the greatest school system. We had the greatest people that were employed because they had the greatest number of graduate expertise in their field. Now we don't, and they do. So what do you do to make that change? How do you change that?
First of all, you improve the education system in the
Oh, I
United
hear
States.
that every year. The education
okay, then
system.
you don't wanna hear that then.
All right,
Then
how are
you
you
don't
going to
wanna hear
improve
that.
it?
You don't want to hear that.
How are you
then.
gonna prove it?
If you're going to go to school,
Yeah.
then you're going to borrow money. Then you only borrow money if you're going to go to a PhD.
What does money have to do with going to school?
You're talking about student loans, Dan.
Yeah, I'm saying that it should be free.
College should be free.
You should be going to state school for free if you live in that state. You should be going for free. Okay, that's the way you inspire people to become more educated so we can compete in the world with other nations that outpopulate us.
I don't know that if giving somebody something for free stimulates them
Oh,
to
here we
achieve.
go. It's the dirty word, free.
Back in the 50s, state colleges and state universities were very cheap.
Right.
I mean, cheap
Right.
comparatively. And people were willing to pay the taxes to support
You said the dirty
first-rate
Republican word,
educational
taxes.
system. And who's going to pay for it? Taxes pay for it. Because taxes go for what's supposed to be beneficial to the country. And some people believe that getting more people highly educated and getting a lot of smart people out there doing things is beneficial to the country.
You don't think that way?
Of course I think that way.
Well, then how are you going to stimulate it?
Okay, first of all, the whole student loan program is out of control. Okay, you can borrow money from banks. You can't discharge it in bankruptcy. You can apply it to whatever you want to apply it to, your rent, your car, your insurance, so on and so forth. Okay, and what it's done is the administrative costs of colleges has gone through the roof. So the colleges see this endless bucket of money that they can get from their students that they know they're going to get. And they could just say, you want to do gender studies? Go ahead.
So what's your solution to that? Socialize the colleges?
No, not at all.
Oh,
But
then
no,
what's
but
your
if you're-
solution?
But if someone wants to motivate themselves to be something of significance,
Yeah.
they have to have a stake in it.
Yeah?
I had a stake in my education. Okay? So, yeah, I took it pretty seriously in my education. Nobody gave it to me, and I don't think we should give it to people just because they decide that they want to go and study, 14th
But you're not the
century
only
English
one.
literature.
I mean, I worked my way through college to
Okay.
become a social worker by being a bouncer at the Aragon. I kicked
I cleaned
people's
toilets.
asses
Go
for
ahead.
30
Right.
years,
Right.
okay? Because
Okay.
I made a career out of it afterwards. Okay? But that isn't the point. The point is, why does it have to be that way? You're describing a model, a bootstrap model, okay, that not everybody is able to use. There are people who are totally unable to use that model to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, go to school, support their mother who's divorced from their father and has some debilitating disease, two
No,
other
don't add the
siblings.
debilitating disease.
Okay,
Don't add the debilitating
no,
disease,
okay,
'cause we
you
have
got
provisions
you got
for
all of it.
debilitating
All right, I
disease.
know
Go ahead.
Doge will take care of the debilitating diseases, right?
No,
Where's
go ahead.
Elon when you need him? Anyway, I'm saying that there's always a reason why the society, and that's why we're a society, okay, should help itself. We're losing track of that. We are a nation. We should act as a nation, not that we pay taxes, those guys don't, so they shouldn't get nothing. Okay? I mean, that's.
No, it's not that they shouldn't get anything.
Well-
but they shouldn't get everything for free. If anything has taught us,
Education isn't everything.
okay.
Education
according
and
to you, it's
It
everything
used- it
because we're
used to
losing the
work
war to
here.
the
Well,
Chinese.
you said everything.
Cheap college education used to work here, and it works in Europe.
So why do colleges get so expensive?
I don't know why.
Because they couldn't raise
Well,
taxes. Every time somebody from the college administration would go to the election, they'd say we would need an increase in taxes in order to increase the junior college and send some money to the state universities. They got voted out of office. Okay? When I went to Italy a couple of weeks ago, and you can attest to this, you went to Italy, those people have a great country, and it's just like Greece. Beautiful. Weather's great, right?
Okay.
Why doesn't anybody live there anymore? Because they don't want to pay tax, okay? And they don't want to pay tax so bad that you can't travel down the street without seeing bottles, cans,
I don't-
all kinds of garbage because they won't pay for a garbage collector.
It's no. Nobody wants to pay taxes.
That's
Okay,
right.
Nobody wants to, but people will pay taxes, and people will exceed to paying taxes if the taxes are used
Only
wisely.
the way that you want them to
If they're
be.
used wisely. I don't want to waste my money to send
Well,
somebody
that's what
that
a
doesn't want to go
compromise
to
is
college
for,
to go
isn't
to
it?
college.
Isn't that what compromise is for?
How do you compromise that?
Well, you want less money spent on, I don't know, age-dependent children. Okay.
No, I don't.
Well, what do you want less money
Okay.
spent on?
College educators. There's free money that we give students, and then college administrators are making huge amounts of monies, and they do nothing but have meeting 2 days a week,
So you're saying-
and then throw you off the campus
So
if
you're
you don't
saying
disagree
that
with it.
president and the chancellor and all of the administrative body of universities
It's out of hand.
are getting more money, primarily because
Yes.
we're subsidizing tuition fees going to people who cannot afford it normally. That's what you're saying, right?
Not
Is that what I'm
afford it
saying?
normally. They
Is
can't
that what
afford
I'm
it out
hearing?
of their pocket. They have to borrow to get there, and people don't mind borrowing, okay? But the colleges saw this free bucket of money, and they go, oh, we'll hire this one to be an administrator, and that one. And I think if you look at college administration as he pointed out 50 years ago, and look at college administration now, it's exponentially more expensive to administrate a school. My kid went to school and he had to take a course that was absolute nonsense. One kid took bowling, the other one took guitar. My kid, actually, because of me, took early rock and roll history.
There you go.
That he should have, and I go, you guys like, Dad, you should have been like a
Well,
guest
you know-
lecturer at the school. Why am I paying for that?
See, you're
Why?
you're looking at education as white collar trade school.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of is.
And you know, there's the whole thing
Yeah,
about
but he's
education
describing liberal arts.
Hang on.
to make a person more educated, make them a better person, and make them
Well-rounded.
well-rounded. Like there's something valuable intellectually. It makes you a better person to know rock and roll history, or to know Greek history,
I don't think it
or
does.
some of these things that aren't, you know, going to make you money, but they're going to make you a better person. They're going to make you more knowledgeable.
All right.
It
So
has nothing to
They're
do
gonna
with
make you
what
better
my child is
conversations.
going to college for.
well, Nick.
Okay, it doesn't.
All those-
Well, that's what you want college to be for.
Yeah, I mean, education
Yeah,
is
I
so
think is that what-
broad.
But if it's just white collar trade school, we might as well just do away with college and just put every white collar worker in an apprenticeship like a Boilermaker. If he's going to work for General Mills as an accountant, you go in there when you're 17 years old and you hang around in the
Well,
accountant
that's the other way
department
to
and they teach
approach
you how
it.
to be. Well,
But
it
you know
probably
what?
is a
You know-
good way to approach it.
The communists do that, though.
You know.
That's how they do it. They give them an aptitude test in high school,
And they tell you what you're
and
gonna
they
be.
tell you what your aptitude is
Okay,
for.
so you think that's good?
No,
Okay.
I don't think it's good at all.
Okay.
I don't say that that's what we should do.
But
He
if
didn't
one-
say that either. He said there's a program that if you programmed it that way, if it was voluntarily, maybe it'd be okay. All right. I'm not saying. I say it doesn't work either way. All right? We tried it and it doesn't work. The world has tried it. Okay, and it hasn't panned out for him. But capitalism hasn't panned out smoothly either. Okay. I mean we had to put in the Federal Reserve, which a lot of conservatives say, the Federal Reserve. Okay, it's screwing us over. Well, it can. It can screw you over, okay? And you don't have control over it because you can't vote in the Federal Reserve, all right? But you know what's happened since they instituted the Federal Reserve? Go look at the economy and see the number of boom and busts you've had since the Federal Reserve was enacted, okay? And then see what was happening
what kind
before
of system
that.
do you want to live in?
That's the one you want to have. You want to have something that's going to smooth out the
So
economic
what system
plan.
is that?
What's it? Officially it's called a free market. A free market. What do you call
Well,
it?
free market is capitalism.
Free
Dan.
market capitalist economy with elements of socialistic institutions. That's what a PhD economist will tell you our economy is. And the socialist institutions are Social Security, Medicare, anything that you have to pay for that under a libertarian government you would contract for individually.
So Milton Friedman points out it makes an interesting point. He says,
Uncle Milty, I love
They're
him.
melting. Yeah, you know, there's three ways to look at it. If I'm buying something for me, then I'm going to make sure that I'm getting my quality for the price. So I'm going to be concerned about both what I'm getting and what I'm paying for it. If I use my money, Okay? If I use my money to buy something for somebody else, I'm worried about the price, but I might not worry about the quality so much. But when I'm using other people's money, I don't care about the price and I don't care about the quality. And that's what happens when you give too much money to government, when you give too much money to schools to do what
Did
they're
you
going
know
to
that
do.
he had a cousin in the
That's
same?
that's what he says.
Yeah,
Evans.
you know that he had a cousin in the same University of Chicago. His name was Friedman, but I think it was I can't remember his first name. Frank Friedman. Anyway,
Kinky Friedman.
anyway, he said that Milton was a little too self-centered, for his liking.
All right. So
You know,
attack the guy
so-
instead of attacking what he said.
No, I'm
That's
saying
exactly what you're doing.
no. The action defines the guy. Okay, the action that you just said, to make people more responsible, okay, and make government and business less vulnerable, okay, so that you can arrive to the position of fully educating the country, comes from two different points of view. Okay, your point of view is that it's a bootstrap point of view. It's a very conservative. You've got to be, you've got to work hard at it, otherwise you don't appreciate the product. Now, there's a lot of people who, if you give them a free education, are just going to get Fs and not go to class. Okay, and I'm with you on that. All right.
So how do you differentiate those?
I'm not. Well, you know what? By grades.
You don't differentiate. them.
Yeah.
You just
By
put
grades.
up with it.
Oh, but no, because we're discriminating against those that don't come from the good school.
I say you
No,
don't,
that's-
we gotta give them a
differentiate
little bit of
because
a-
you're
He
still
said-
going to benefit in the end. You're
How?
never going to make something perfect.
How are they benefiting at the end?
Because
Tommy?
you're going to have more smart people educated for
You got to get more smart.
and
people.
you're going to have to put up with
Does
the
college
bums.
make you smart?
College doesn't make you smart.
I'll tell you what.
educated.
I'll tell you what. There's a statistic.
I don't think college makes you smart.
No, you know what
I
makes
think
you smart is
Charlie
IQ.
Kirk is smart. He didn't go to
I-
college.
I-
It makes
IQ
you
makes you smart.
educated. And it lets
There's
you do
one-
some things you couldn't
Okay.
do
Okay.
without
So stay on that. What do you? How do you define education? Is education mean that my kid knows a lot more about early rock and roll history than he did last year when he went to that school?
Yeah, that's
big
part of
flipping
being
deal.
that's part of being
Yeah,
educated.
but
What if he
but that
becomes a
doesn't-
musician?
Okay, he's not going to become a musician.
What if he does?
He is not going to become a musician.
You
Meaning can play
predetermined that.
You can play the what if game all day
He doesn't
long.
have to be either. He's going to be a person that knows more than he knew before.
and
About
that would make him
something
valuable.
that is irrelevant to his future.
Well, there's going to be a
It's
lot of
All
things
right,
that are
I'll
going to
tell you
happen
what.
that are
How much do you
irrelevant to
know
him.
about economics? Is economics relevant
Out
to
of
your
my
future?
wheelhouse.
So you just
Is it relevant to your future? Economics is not relevant to your future?
I didn't say it wasn't relevant. I
Well,
just said
if you
that I
don't know
I
anything
don't-
about it, why not? If
because
it's relevant.
I chose not to be an economist.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't follow that logic.
I
okay?
chose. I mean, I can follow the economy.
I chose not to be an economist either, but I got a yearly subscription to the Economist magazine, and
Okay.
I've educated myself on it.
So
I've
at some level,
taught,
you're an economist.
Taught myself
At some
Afriy's
level, I
theorem
am.
and Hathaker's axiom and Slutsky's matrix. I taught myself all of that stuff, and I didn't go to
Okay,
college
and
for
what,
it.
what have you done with that information?
Where did I get it?
What have you done with it?
What have I done? I've assessed my situation and what I should
Okay.
do, where my politics should be, where my thrust should be. What should I anticipate? I can anticipate a couple of things now, okay? I can anticipate that if I see that there's going to be a fire in a Texas refinery, I can anticipate that gasoline is going to go up next week, okay?
I think there's a lot of people that would turn on the news and go, "Oh, that's bad. I'm going to go click on."
But
I'm
a
gonna
lot
go
of
to my
people don't
E-Trade,
understand
I'll go to
supply
my
and demand.
E-Trade and do that.
Okay, when
Okay.
it was double digit, when I bought my house, and I think I went over this, right? It was 16.75% on a 15-year mortgage. Most of that was because of prime rate. None of that demand tools worked, and I found out through economics why it didn't work. So I would know when I go to town hall meetings or I talk to my politicians, I can speak on their level. Or usually I speak above their level because they don't understand it. So, I mean, that's what you need to do. If you get education, now was that in my field? No, it wasn't. It was an elective. I was getting a degree in behavioral science. Okay, what did economics 201, macro and microeconomics, have to do with it? Absolutely nothing. Okay, well, I couldn't say absolutely nothing.
Well,
'cause-
see,
yeah.
there's things that make a person a more interesting conversationalist. You know?
Okay.
Thank
and,
you.
And that has value. You know, to be an interesting person, to be
So
able to
subscribe
to talk.
and hit like.
If you're an introvert, does it?
No.
Okay, well then that's
But you know,
not
the
necessarily
introverts-
true.
the
We got a
introverts
couple
get to-
comments,
get to-
guys.
all right.
There's people out there. How you doing?
So earlier you had Ivan chime in and said, how do you improve the education when General Bone Spurs shut down the Department of Education? And then lastly,
First of all, the Department of Education doesn't educate your kids. Okay, they're a huge overseer, and since the Department of Education came into existence, college tuitions have gone up. Kids reading at appropriate grade levels has gone down. And what they want to do is, like a lot of other things, is put it back into the hands of the states. They don't want to make it a national protocol that every school has to follow whatever the Department of Education says they want to follow at any given time.
So you think Montana can educate a kid as well as New York? Do you
No, why
think
not?
Indiana
Why
can
not?
educate a kid
Why
as
not?
well as Illinois?
Why not?
Look at their budget.
Well,
Why not?
Look at their income.
Because
So
Indiana's
education
full
has
of
all it
Hoosiers.
has to do with budget, and it's got some of the greatest colleges in the country.
Yeah, but they're not Indiana colleges.
Yeah,
They're
they are.
Purdue. Purdue doesn't belong to Indiana. It's
I
a
think
private.
it does now.
No, it does.
Oh, they got Purdue?
Yeah.
Oh.
Indiana, okay. I mean so that doesn't fly.
I'm saying it, I don't think so. Okay, I don't think the
So
I don't think
so
it's a level
education. So education is directly tied to how much money you spend because
Yeah.
they've disproved that. Look at Chicago board. Look at Chicago public schools.
Yeah.
They spend more money per child on education, and they have some of the lowest test scores, some of the lowest graduation rates, some of the lowest.
Why don't you say the elephant that's in the room?
What, the Chicago Teachers Union?
No.
Oh, who?
The customers, the product. Okay, it's always been an
so the
underlying
kids-
Republican issue that
What?
these minority groups just don't cut the mustard. So
That's just crap.
what's Chicago
That's just
School
crap.
District?
No,
Is it
I'm
mostly
sorry.
minorities?
Conservatives do not think that, Dan.
They don't?
No, they do not.
Oh, my
No,
God.
I'm a conservative, and I don't think.
Well,
that
you
way.
don't because you're a
Well,
deacon.
okay, well, I think we're talking about conservatives, and I
Yeah.
can only speak for myself. But I know a lot of conservatives that feel the same way. I don't believe that a kid from the inner city doesn't have the ability to educate himself in a proper setting.
I didn't
proper
say inner
education.
city. I said minority.
Well, inner city in Chicago is usually minority.
Not
But even
really.
so,
You
how
can
come
go to the
Hispanics
north
have a higher
side and
grad-
that's not minority.
How come Hispanics have a higher graduation rate than blacks in the city of Chicago?
I don't know. Tell me, is it the family
Well,
structure?
it's not. Maybe it is. Oh, but we don't want to talk about that.
I'm talking
That's
about
bad.
it.
That's bad.
What's your
Do you
opinion
think-
on it?
I-
So it's not
I
the
think-
teachers, it's the family structure?
I think that could be part of it.
It's the Board of Education, it's not the Board of Education. It's the teachers, it's not the
I think
teachers.
there's
It's
a
the family
combination of
structure.
things, but the Chicago Teachers Union run the city of Chicago. They actually have their own guy that's the mayor now of the city of Chicago. Let's not kid ourselves. So, and their budget, they've blown out their budget for I don't know how many years, and the kids in Illinois in Chicago, I should say, are no smarter for it. So you can't use that as a symbol of money will breed education.
So how would you change that?
Well, I don't know about that either, because
What?
there are some very good schools in Chicago.
There are some very good schools.
There are some very good public
That's
schools
not.
in
They're
Chicago.
not. Listen, I'm not naive
And-
enough
and-
to say
and-
that.
and
that
the
a general
smart-
statement
the-
encompasses
the
every one of
smart
them.
kids go to them. The biggest problem I have is that they segregate the smart kids from the kids that aren't smart.
So that the
And-
kids
and,
that aren't
uh,
smart can't look up to any.
They don't have
Progress.
anybody, people to
Right.
help them, and then the people that are smart, they don't learn how to. The people that are smart don't learn how to deal with people that aren't.
Well, some of them do. They know how to manipulate them.
I don't know where you get that from, but no.
Oh, I know where I get it from.
Where do you get it from?
You know, if you're in school, like at Peyton, and everybody in that you see every day in school is real smart, you learn how to deal day to day with
Are they
real smart
really
people.
smart, or are they learning to get smart?
They're
There's a
smart.
different. There's a difference between having a high IQ and walking in the door and being able to figure things out like that. And there's another thing to say, listen,
when they get in that school, they're both.
I need to find a way to figure things out. I mean, I know somebody that has a learning disability and he didn't realize that maybe college wasn't for him, okay? But he taught himself how to learn. He's not a dumb kid, but he had a learning disability, and he had to find out a way for him to learn. Certain kids need to find ways to learn for themselves, okay? They have to be given that opportunity, all right? We need to do that. That's not an issue for me. But I don't believe that just because a kid comes, that he's a minority, that he is automatically behind the eight ball.
I'll tell you,
not at all.
there's a way you can look at this in real time right now that will defeat what you're saying. Okay, there's a lot of people that say at this point in time that you can't have an argument with the other side, political side, because they don't have the tools. They don't have the tools to know that what they don't know. Okay, they either don't have the education or they don't have the intelligence.
I'm completely lost as to what
It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Okay.
People that are stupid
Don't know they're stupid.
don't know they're stupid because they can't analyze themselves.
Right.
Because
And-
they don't analyze
and
themselves.
people who are smart-
they think they're smart.
And people who are smart think they're smart in everything, even though they're not schooled in the things that they're not smart in.
Okay.
The people
Okay.
that are smart analyze themselves and have doubts
Right.
because they're smart.
Because they're smart. They don't have confidence.
and they're looking for what they don't know.
So you're saying that people that are smart is an innate quality that you can't teach.
It's a different approach that you have to take.
We
That's what I just said.
we
Yes.
do have Ange chiming in right now. Who
Go ahead.
is just stating that he's wrong. I work in these communities and they do not have these tools to succeed. Period. Schools in marginalized communities do not have the same advantage. And she mentioned earlier, you are an intelligent man through lived experience, and a college degree does not make a person smart.
Correct.
I went to grade school with the lawyers, so no offense.
Great. I agree. I mean, like I said, I've mentioned him before. Charlie Kirk is a proponent of, like, you don't need to go to college to be smart and to be successful.
well, I know that. You don't
Yeah,
have to tell me that.
there's no
Okay.
argument for me on that.
Again, right.
And
Right.
having gone to college doesn't make a person smart. They don't tell me that either.
No, but it does give them
But it
tools.
does make you educated.
Yes, that's the tool.
You know, if they're paying
Okay?
attention.
You wouldn't. Your IQ level matters nothing. What matters is that you know how to do courtroom work. Okay, so you've been educated in a field that I can't do. Okay, my IQ could be higher than yours. His IQ could be higher than mine.
I don't know how to. I'm not a boiler maker.
Well,
I
that's
don't
true.
know how to do that.
I mean, and that's the
Okay?
Dunning-Kruger
It did
effect.
pretty well for him, right?
Yeah, but you,
Okay.
you realize you can't do it.
See, that's a lot of people don't
I
realize
don't. I
that.
don't have the knowledge or the education to do it.
All right, well, look at Rand Paul.
What?
Okay?
You couldn't be a lawyer? Of course you could.
I could have been a lawyer.
Of course you could.
I should have been a lawyer.
I don't think being
His
a lawyer
daughter's
is
a
anything,
lawyer.
Right. I don't think being a lawyer is anything special. I mean,
No,
if I
it's
could do it,
better-
anybody could do it.
It's
my
better than
husband-
on specific
It's learning
subjects.
how to learn.
Right.
Okay. Once you figure out how to do it, okay, then law school.
You
isn't
have to
that-
have the capacity to be
You gotta-
able to learn.
You got to have the desire as well.
Well, yeah.
And you have to have the commitment
Yeah.
to do it.
Well,
Like
it-
any other form of education.
It's like I said about my dual personality when I was educating myself in college. I was learning how to manipulate or actually counsel people in social work, which is a facilitator for change. Something that a person would want to be able to move on in their life, to go anywhere with. Okay, in my other life, I was working my way through college being a bouncer at the Aragon. I was facilitating their behavior for change in a different way, okay? The communication was different. It was more one way. You get out of aisle now. Well, I want to see the show. I kick your ass next. I want to see the show. Bam. Conclusion done, okay? And end of story.
Behavior modification.
Behavior modification. Okay. How do you have those two personalities in one person? I have no idea. Okay. I'd have to switch gears,
You know, when I was a Boilermaker, I was an apprentice teacher. And I got the first year apprentices. And it's a 4-year program to go through the apprenticeship. And one afternoon a week, we they come down to the Union Hall for instruction at the Union Hall. And so I taught them a lot of things that didn't have anything to do with Boilermaking, doing the work.
Well-
But that had a lot of things to do with being a proper Boilermaker and being a proper union member. And I taught them history. I taught them economics as far as I
And they
understood
elected you as a representative because you were
Listen,
smart.
Listen, with the adage, with age comes wisdom. Okay, and it doesn't matter which age you are, because the older you get, the more wisdom you get. You know, it wasn't until my father passed away and I became older that I looked back and I said, damn, you know, for a guy that just was a restaurateur and drove a bakery truck, my dad was a pretty smart guy.
Sure he was.
Okay, because he told me things that when he told me those things, I was like, what are you talking about? And then you look back on him and you go like, okay, that was pretty sage advice. That was pretty smart stuff. Wasn't an educated guy,
No.
you know,
Well,
but
my-
he was smart.
my
He
father
figured
was-
it out. And I think what you're describing is more mentoring than educating. When you mentor somebody, when you take somebody that's a little bit younger than you and you teach them this, or your life experience says, listen, you don't want to do it this way or you don't want to do it that way. I remember when I was a public defender, I'd have some young state's attorneys coming up, and I was the bad guy. I was the opposite side, and I would tell the guy, don't do that this way. Do it that way. That's not, you know, are you messing with me? No, I'm not messing with you. And then after a while, they trusted you, and they go like, thanks for the advice, okay? Had to work with the guy every day, you know, day in and day out. But the point of the matter is my experience, I helped him. Even though he was the opposite side, that wasn't the point. It wasn't always, you know, prosecutors and defense attorneys aren't always this. Sometimes we have to work together, but the point is you help people, okay? You help people with your experience to get past into their own experiences, okay? And I don't think we allow a lot of kids in schools to do that anymore.
Yeah, but how do you do that on a mass basis? I mean, how many thousands of kids are in the Chicago school district? How much money do they have to deal with? You're saying they have, what, 47,000 per student? Isn't that the figure?
It's pretty high. I don't have the number. I'm not going to guess at it either. But it's pretty high. It's one of the highest in the country.
So, outside of the results-driven data, what do you say they're doing wrong? Should they institute physical punishment again, like we did at
come on.
Catholic schools?
That's not going to happen, and you know that. You can't. Listen. You
Made
can't
me
even-
smarter.
You got students.
You
that are
handed it
swinging
back.
You got students that are swinging on teachers, and the teacher's got to apologize and let the kid back in the class. I
So
mean,
that
come
doesn't
on,
work.
It's crazy.
The capital punishment's
No.
out
Well,
because they're
You know,
tougher.
and you know, nobody wants to hear this, but the education system is very heavily slanted in liberalism. Very heavily slanted.
So how you conservatize it? Okay, I mean, you get in a class. I would love to put you in a
Because
classroom.
you can't. I don't allow my kids to go. Didn't allow my kids to go to school and just buy what the teachers were feeding them. Case in point.
Yeah.
Okay, they had a mass shooting at a school.
Yeah.
All right. Kid says my son says we got to wear orange tomorrow. I said what? Says we're protesting the mass shooting. Okay. And why orange? Well, because hunters wear orange, so everybody knows it's an anti-gun thing. Okay. I said, why don't you ask your teacher about how to get rid of guns? Did you ask her that? Yeah, they don't want to talk about that.
About how to do what?
How to get rid of guns? About what do we do about gun violence? Okay. We just want to get rid of guns. Guns are bad. Nobody should have guns. Okay, so why don't you sit down with the students and tell them, here's what you need to do. It's a Second Amendment right. To change the Second Amendment, you have to propose a change. It has to be voted by 2/3 of the states and all. No, they don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about slavery. Oh, Thomas Jefferson had slaves. Where did the slaves come from? Slaves came mostly from Muslim slave traders in Africa that enslaved other Africans and bought them and sold them all around the world, not just to Americans.
Berbers mostly.
Well,
Okay, but hang on.
the Muslim
But he
trade was
asked
on
that.
the East Coast.
He
Yeah.
asked that question, and they didn't want to talk about it. Okay, so you can't allow kid in his neighborhood kid had to write an assignment. He had to apologize for being white. I told my son,
Oh, come on.
Danny, I'm
Come
telling
on.
you, Danny, I am telling you this happened. Okay,
You know,
I'm sorry, but let me finish. I'm telling you it happened. Now, if you don't want to believe it, that's on you.
I don't. I
It
don't want to believe
happened.
it.
It happened. I'll
Okay.
tell you the kid's name. Okay, in the
Give
school
me the
that it happened.
teacher's name.
Right, and I told my kid, I go, if they ask you to do that tomorrow, you tell them I am not doing that.
And he
Okay?
didn't, right?
And he didn't. Well, they didn't
And
ask
you
him.
didn't do 'em.
I didn't. He did. They didn't ask him because that was the other teacher's class protocol.
Okay.
Okay, so
So it didn't happen.
so it doesn't. So you said, how do you combat that? There's a reason why the demographic of like 18 to 25-year-old males is leaning very much more Republican and conservative, because they're not buying into a lot of the stuff that people are telling them anymore. There's other avenues and other resources for them to get their information, number one.
Yeah, cute.
And number two, you know, they come from structures that say, no, we're not buying into that. That's not what we think is right or wrong. Okay.
Well, the Republicans are also telling them it's okay to act like an asshole.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
How?
They are telling them
Whoa,
it's
whoa,
okay
whoa.
to be a racist.
Well, it starts
No,
with the
they're
freedom
not.
of speech.
I'm sorry. I don't
It's
think it's
it's
okay.
okay to act
no,
like a lunkhead.
No, I've never told my kid it's okay to act like
No,
a racist.
you haven't.
Okay, well, I'm a conservative.
See, you are.
You're
You,
generalizing.
you like to generalize.
Oh,
I'm not generalizing.
You are not a typical conservative.
Yes, I am.
I don't think you
No,
are
you're
at
not.
all.
Yes, I am.
I don't
yes,
think
I
you are
am.
at all.
You don't
I
wear a red
absolutely am.
hat.
Huh?
You don't wear a red
You're
hat.
right. I don't wear a red hat.
And you're thoughtful.
You know?
Again? Yes, because I am conservative. Because I care about other people. Okay?
Yeah.
I care about other people. So,
So,
yeah.
so you're like a
An anomaly.
1960s conservative. You're not
I
like
don't
the
know
modern
1960s
conservative.
conservative.
No,
is.
he's like a Rockefeller conservative.
You're like a Rockefeller or
You want to label me as a
Dirk-
Rockefeller guy?
Dirksen.
Okay.
Well, right now, your own people label you as a rhino, okay? Because
No, I don't think so.
you're not radical with the.
I
with
will
the
tell you that
MAGA.
that a lot of my compadres at the courthouse, where we sit around like this and have coffee and discuss things, they don't think of me as a rhino. Trust me.
Well, they think you as a radical
They,
MAGA.
they think that I'm a pretty staunch conservative. Yes, and I make no bones about it. I believe I am.
I think a lot of conservatives today believe, and a lot of Republicans believe, they resist taxation that Republicans willingly paid in the 1950s, and things that
Overtaxation.
programs.
Useless taxation.
No, it was taxes that built the interstate.
Yeah,
No,
90.
no, we're not
That put in
against that.
Well,
Wait a minute.
Okay,
There was
I'm sorry,
Eisenhower.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
See,
Go ahead.
you don't.
Go ahead.
You don't like history, so you don't listen when I'm putting things in a historical perspective. I'm talking about conservatives and the way conservatives have changed, and I think it's because they think that the United States is finished, and I think a lot of conservatives, instead of thinking how much more we're going to build and how much more we're going to create, and then there's going to be more to go around, now they're thinking it's an end game and just grab what you
you got.
can, what you got, because it's all going to stop. And in the 50s, we were building industry, airports, interstate highway
Seaports,
system,
interstate.
the St. Lawrence Seaway system. We were doing all kinds of things.
We're doing
Putting up-
nothing now. We don't think big anymore.
And I think it's because a
Not
lot of
allowed to.
I think a lot of these people
Not allowed to.
have lost
give-
confidence
you know what?
in
If
the
you told
country's future.
if you told Democrats that wall that you want to build between Mexico and the United States, if you told Democrats that instead of making a wall that you're going to spend, on average, according to the budget administrator, $60 million to maintain and patrol a year, okay? Not to mention what it would cost just to put it up. Instead, spend billions, okay, and make it a canal.
Well, yeah,
You know, like I said last week,
previous episode, you
think
talked about the
big.
canal.
Okay,
idea.
we don't think big. We can make money on that. We don't have to charge Mexico. Every boat that comes from China or Japan or India is going to be charged.
There's a lot of people out there that
And they'll
like
gladly
to think
pay.
big, okay, but we've gotten overregulated. We've gotten to, you have to go through so many hoops.
Wait a minute, you got the big deregulator in office right now, and
Well, yeah, people don't like that.
what he can
They don't like
deregulate whatever
and
it is.
And he is, and he has been. And,
So what's the
and you
hang
guys-
up?
You guys don't like it. I don't think there is a hang up.
Well, he's not doing it.
Okay, I'm not, again, we're talking about history. He's been in office about 150 days, maybe? Okay.
Yeah.
He hasn't been in office.
And about that, in Biden's first 150 days, my IRAs went up 3%. In this guy's first 50 days, my IRA's crashed 7%, minus 7%. So he's not looking good against Biden's first 100 days. So I hope he looks better.
So that's your only barometer.
Well,
Your
that's
IRA?
my first indicator. He's only been in office for 100 days, and
Your
I've
only-
lost
your only-
28% of
your
my
only-
income.
Your only barometer is that.
Well, it's important to me, isn't it important
It's
to you?
important to you.
Yes.
And you say that conservatives don't care about anybody else. That is all he cares about is what happens
It's
to
just
him.
as important to you as immigration is, okay? Or whatever. Money, when you're retired and your only income is off your IRAs or your Social Security, it becomes very important. This guy came into office saying, you're going to see day one, you're going to be making so much money, you're not going to know what to do. Day 1 to day 100, I lost 28%. That's real. That's not BS.
You didn't
That's
lose it
real.
because you didn't take it out.
I didn't take it
You
out.
didn't
It's
take
gone.
it
I
out.
can't take it out. Okay? Tell my accountant that. Okay? I'll get a big
You-
tax
you
write.
don't-
You
you
know
don't
my
lose it-
accountant, my
you don't
Republican
lose it
accountant
until you
said,
take it out.
don't worry about it. You get a big tax write-off at the
What
end of the
he's,
year.
what he's doing
What
isn't
did Kenny Rogers say?
working.
You don't count your money when you're sitting at the table, right?
What
When
he's,
it's all
what
done,
he's
you count.
doing isn't working. He's causing
Uncertainty.
confusion. If legislatively, if the tariffs went through legislatively,
It'd be different.
then businessmen could plan for that.
Right.
But these tariffs could be gone tomorrow. The president wakes up in the morning and he has another idea, and he has a. You see the way the stock market goes up and down with what he says he's going to do with the tariffs,
Volatility
which
is out
leads
the
to
wall.
thinking, boy, there's something going on here. Some people are making money off of this, but it doesn't
Well,
matter
okay,
anyway.
okay.
But the point is that he's creating confusion, and it's not having the result that he says he wants.
I have a business leasing truck drivers.
Right.
Okay, and the truck drivers I lease service O'Hare Airport for imports. Okay, that come from overseas, from all over. The two companies that are my biggest companies do their business with Toyota and Nissan. They have shrunk in the last 2 months because they're uncertain as to whether or not they can continue products in the way that they were doing before. Okay,
I'm
because
not
what they
all on
ship
board.
is the
No, I get what you're
they
saying.
ship is parts. Okay,
I
they don't
understand.
ship the whole
I
car.
understand. I'm not as big on the whole tariff thing. I think a lot of it is him posturing to try to put our country in a better tariff position than we were. Okay, there's no reason why we can't export beef to Australia because they just won't let us in. Screw you.
That's not the reason.
No. It has.
He's
it's an
giving you that
overall-
as a ruse. And you're suffering
Okay,
because
so-
you
so-
haven't
so what
taken
if-
economics. You're
Okay,
going
so
for
I'm
it.
just illiterate to it. So,
No, here, I'll give you the rules.
so do you think
They
that-
chop off money off the top end of income. They have to get that money back someplace. So if they put a tariff on,
Right.
it's a sales tax.
We understand
And
that,
who
Danny.
pays
I
for that?
understand that. I'm not-
Everybody pays for that.
I understand that, but when you're talking about an overall economic strategy for a country
Yeah.
that is trying to have trade with various other countries, and they're over tariffing us, and we are getting the short end of that, I think a lot of this is just all posturing.
We have
by
an
him.
island that was made of penguins and no humans. He slapped a tariff on the penguins. There was an island that had just U.S. service people on it in the Indian Ocean. A tariff on that island. Come on,
Let
just
it play out.
Let it
Let it
play
play out.
Listen,
It's not all set in
listen.
stone yet. Let it play out. I
Economics
don't like-
teachers will tell you tariffs were dropped in the early 20th century for one reason and one reason only. They were subject to boom and bust economies. You can't run a country on an economy that is not solid, that is not anticipated.
So how do you get your
do
economy
income.
solid? How
You
do
have
get your economy
GMP.
solid?
Huh?
How do you get your economy solid?
You do what we were doing, progressive income tax. Now you know you can project what you're going to have for an income the next year. Okay, you can do that. You
Progressive
can't.
income tax is solidifies our social economy.
Yeah, because you know what the budget's going to be. You have a decent idea. There's a formula. Again, you didn't take economics, so I'm not going to be able to explain this
So
to you.
bitch slap me again for not
Okay.
taking economics. Go ahead.
All right, I'm not bitching at you. I'm just saying
No,
the-
you're bitch
the-
slapping me, but go ahead. I'll
the-
take
the
it. You've
playing
done it to me
field isn't
before.
level.
You've taken me before.
All right.
It's taking advantage of me.
That's a logical fallacy of the appeal to authority. The Greeks should know that.
See, this is why I do this, 'cause at the end of the day, I'm still gonna like him.
I'm
even though he's
helping you.
slipping. I know you are.
Anyway, no, it's if you do a sales, it's just you got to think of it, the country being like a state. The only way the governor of Illinois can raise money is by income tax or sales tax. All right, and he does a few other things. There's transportation, hotel, motel, that kind of excise taxes. All right, but those are the major taxes: sales taxes and income taxes. Okay, we don't have in Illinois. We don't have any royalties. Okay, we don't get royalties from oil. We don't get royalties from gas. We don't get any royalties from minerals, okay, precious metals or whatever. Texas gets all kinds of royalties, so they don't have an income tax. So if people want to go to a state that doesn't have an income tax, they move to Texas or to Florida.
Right.
Okay, and then they blame Pritzker for raising the taxes over here to give them a decent lifestyle. We don't have royalties in Illinois. Okay, and the same thing can be projected with the country. Tariffs were used for small countries to run a budget before they had enough population that they could support themselves on GNP. Okay, so listen, I guess
So going back to
Yeah.
our last president,
yeah.
I think there's some serious issues that we didn't discuss about who is actually running our country, who is the keeper of the auto pen, which
Yeah.
might not sound like a big deal, but it really is.
No, it was
Okay?
Nancy Reagan.
Now,
we know it.
the question comes in: is do you think that should be looked into, or do we just
It's
let
gone.
it go? Do we just let it go?
Well, if we look into that, we got to look into Reagan. If we look into Reagan, we got to
Well,
look
Reagan's
into.
dead, so you're not going to do anything to him, or to the people that.
So what
were
are we
still
going to
standing
do?
around him.
What are we going to do? We're
Well,
going to raise
I always like this that you know when Trump got out of office, nobody wanted to say, okay, just let him go and leave him alone, and we're in charge now. And we'll
Some
just do
people
it.
did. Some people didn't.
Most people didn't, and they went after him with everything that they could.
Because he was a convicted felon.
Oh yeah, the whole convicted felon, that's going to go away. You watch, mark my words. As a lawyer, I'm going to tell you, mark
Well,
my
he,
words.
he
That's
did.
number
He
one.
did things he shouldn't have done.
Really?
Yeah,
What?
like take all that stuff to Mar-a-Lago. He shouldn't.
Wait a
have-
minute.
he
Wait a
shouldn't- he
minute.
shouldn't
No,
have
no, no,
done
no,
that.
no. He's entitled to take the stuff to Mar-a-Lago.
That's
Okay. Bill
that's,
Clinton took stuff. They found it in the sock drawer.
Well, they
Okay?
should have gone after
Biden
Clinton,
didn't have
too.
the,
Go after
the
him,
Biden
too.
didn't have the authority to take stuff, and he took it. And remember what he said? Well, he's too stupid to go to trial, so we're just not going to prosecute him.
That doesn't
The Hahn
mean
report.
that
Okay.
just
Doesn't
because
mean
other
that's
people
right.
did it doesn't,
No,
doesn't
sorry,
make it right.
sorry, you're wrong on that one.
And then he
You're
had
wrong on
all
that one.
kinds of stuff he took.
He's entitled to. He's entitled to.
Says who?
There's the Supreme Court, because when it happened to Clinton, they exonerated him by saying that he has, under the Records Act, Archives Act, he has the authority to take that.
Okay, I'm going to ask you something else. huh?
Okay.
Okay.
But did they just let him go? No, they didn't let him go. We want to just let
Trump
we just want
wants to
sweep
do a third
everything with-
term.
we want to move forward and sweep everything under the rug because it's Joe Biden and whatnot. No, let's not go back. That's
you
always
know
your
what?
mantra. That's always your mantra when
you want
your butts-
to
when your
go
butts
after
are hanging out.
Biden? Go after.
No, I don't want to
him.
go after Biden. I want to go after people that were running things. Probably his wife. She should be in prison. That
The
woman.
doctor?
Yes. To allow your husband.
Is Nancy
Don't do that.
Reagan still
She should
still
go to
alive?
jail too then.
Frau Doktor?
Yeah, she should have gone to jail. I don't want to hear the third term thing. The third team's not going to happen. Let him run against Obama and lose. He won't lose against Clinton. I'll tell you that. Nobody trusts that guy anymore.
No, I don't know. All the women like Clinton.
Yeah, well, he's pretty old now, so I don't know. Maybe they want to go for somebody younger.
Did you look at the women in the bleachers behind Trump? They all look like women at the Sox bleachers.
Clinton was the worst thing that happened to the Democratic Party, from my point of view.
And it was the last Democrat I voted for.
See?
I did vote for Bill
See, that's
Clinton.
a problem with the guy.
I did vote for Bill
He
Clinton.
was too damn conservative.
And the
Obama
night,
was
and
too
the night when
conservative.
they were playing that stupid song, and I was sitting with my buddies in a bar, I look at it and I go, "What the hell did I just do? Did I actually just vote for this goofball?" And I did, and I regret it to this day.
Yeah, but who was his opponent at the time? Which one was it?
George Bush.
George Bush.
You know,
They became good friends, him and his old man.
they all become good friends, Danny. That's the game. Come on, that's the game. Didn't you see Obama and
W?
no, Obama and Trump were sitting together yapping it up at the funeral for the Queen or whatever, the Queen Mother or something. One of those events.
So we're the
I
fools.
saw a guy
So
last-
we're the
yeah.
fools on the hill.
I saw a guy
Absolutely,
last.
yeah, we are.
I saw a guy last night at the White Sox game dressed like the Pope.
Bring back Andy the Clown.
Andy the
Bring
yeah.
back Andy the Clown. What are we going to talk about next week?
Well, we're supposed to talk
Oh.
about a little bit of rock and roll, and I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was driving here. I was listening to the James Gang
Oh,
on the
Superb.
stereo, and I'm thinking, you know, Joe Walsh did jack shit after he lost. He made a lot of money after he
well,
left the
he was
James
he was
Gang.
good with the Eagles. I liked the Eagles when Joe Walsh was with
Yeah,
them.
but I mean, you know, the James Gang was cool.
And Fleetwood
That
Mac.
was a cool band.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was-
Jimmy Fox was a great drummer. He's one of the great unheralded.
Listen, I'm an
drummers.
old Faces guy. I would have loved to have seen those guys get back together and tour around and just do all the old stuff.
Well, I want to say
Well,
one
anyway,
thing.
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking Joe Walsh had done nothing of any
I'll-
interest to me after he left the James Gang.
I want to give the audience a little bit of history on Chicago rock and roll, and then we're going to sign off. Okay, and next week is going to be mine, and my topic is going to be your favorite taxes. Okay, I was a tax collector for a number of years, so that's my expertise, folks. Get ready for me. Anyway, the history I want to talk about was how we started searching at the Aragon. Because when we first started working there in 1970, we didn't search, okay? Because we came from Circle Campus, and it was more of a friendly atmosphere there, you know.
Peace, love,
Peace,
Woodstock.
love, and smoke,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
sit down on the floor and do your doob, right?
Hey, brother.
Aragon, different story. The first couple of events went smooth. Somewhere around the third or fourth event, we had a guy called Iggy Pop. Okay, I never heard of this guy. Never heard of him. Yeah, I came from the western suburbs. Iggy Pop, and I remember he had a solo appearance at
Beginnings.
no, it was
He did beginnings in the late.
yeah,
70s.
he did beginnings, but later when he became popular. So we had him at the Aragon, and this one kid told me in advance who I'd always talk to, you know, he'd say, well, get ready for some S&Mers. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, his crowd is all sadomasochists. And I said, well, how big is this crowd? He goes, right now it's not big. He said, but it could get big. We sold about 3,000 tickets, okay? The Aragon holds 5,500.
Right.
So we couldn't open up the balcony. We just had the main floor, and that was it. We only had 4 guys on stage. Okay, it was the Rico and his
Names
brother
don't
on the
matter,
one
yeah.
side, and me on the other side with the other Peony brother, Angelo. Anyway, Iggy gets on stage. Now, we had no search. We didn't know anything about search. And at that point, we thought searches were kind of
Invasive.
invasive and
Against my
illegal.
right,
We
yeah.
had this thing, yeah, it's not right, you can't search or seize. We didn't know the Fourth Amendment like we know it now. Okay, anyway,
It's really not a Fourth Amendment. Go
the
ahead.
Iggy goes on stage, the spotlight hits him. As soon as the spotlight hits him, it was like being on the inside of a popcorn machine. Everything that could be thrown was thrown at the stage. He's up there dodging everything from
laughing.
braziers to bottles. Okay, it was just I couldn't think. What am I going to do? You know, and the stage at the time was the low stage. It was only the 3-foot stage, the original band shell stage. So the bottles were landing all over. Cans were landing. So me and Ricky Vega went down the aisle all the way to the back, and we waited at the back. And then I called Freddie Dagerberg, and I told him, bring up your karate guys from the front door. And I told him, and I had Terry Stewart, who's 6'8", right? And I said, Terry, you're going to be the crane. Ricky, you and me are going to be the punchers. You know, so we'd wait in the back of the crowd until somebody would throw something in front of us. Okay, when they'd stand up and throw something, I'd tap them on the shoulder. They'd turn around, and I'd punch them as hard as I could in the face. Usually knocked them out. Okay, and then Ricky and I and Terry, who was 6'8", would crane him out of his seat, and we'd hand him over to the Bushido boys, and they'd throw him out the back door and in the alley. We worked our way all the way halfway up the Aragon floor, and now, because they were a sadomasochistic crowd, we couldn't get away with this with Journey or any hippie crowd. Okay, S&Mers, we were the attraction. we were the band, okay? We were the reason to enjoy life, because now they got to see somebody getting their ass kicked in real life, okay? And so every time some guy would get up and throw something, the crowd would cheer behind him, right? So the guy'd be going around, yeah, you know, tap on the shoulder.
So how much did vending and concessions play into the part of searching? Because everybody was bringing
Well,
stuff
you
in
know,
and whatnot, and it's like, wait, where was
I
that
found
money?
that out later, okay? When we started doing bigger venues like the World Music Theater and any kind of auditorium, they had union vendors, and they had set up with ARA and all these other.
So then, what was the purpose of your first way before that? Because the world
Our-
opened up in '90.
Right.
You're talking about early mid '70s.
Right.
Now. So
What-
why were you? What were you frisking for in the mid '70s?
Missiles, things that could hurt.
Okay.
Okay? Knives,
Bottles.
guns, bottles,
Bottles.
cans. Okay?
Okay.
And then people got upset because they thought we were going to drink their stuff, right? We were robbing them. You know?
did.
You know, so we had these big garbage.
I did acquire a nice set of,
Well, some of us did, yeah.
Swiss Army
Yeah.
knives from the Aragon over the course of time. I
I
still got
can't say that everybody
Yeah.
was angelic on it, but we did do a show. I mean, we put garbage cans next to the doors, so
Right.
when we searched through the stuff went in the garbage cans. Now some guys did dumpster diving, not me, you know, and I frowned upon it, you know, and as far as making sure that people didn't steal other people's libations, at the end of the night, I would give everybody, I bought a couple barrels of beer, you know, and everybody would drink with, you know, at least 2 cans at the end, unless my father-in-law was around, you know, and he'd have 6 cans. But good old Jack, God rest his soul. Anyway,
All right, back to rock and roll. We've gotten away from
So-
rock and roll over the last couple episodes.
so that's
we gotta
history.
Get back on it.
That's that part of history. That's how I call it the birth of the search. Okay, that from that moment on at the Aragon, we searched everything. In fact, I can remember at Rosemont Horizon searching for Frank Sinatra, but what we were searching for was cameras.
Cameras.
Video cameras, you know. And do you remember that Hindu act that we had at the
Rosemont.
what was it?
was
the
Rosemont.
Harrison Center in
No, I
Illinois.
knew that one.
Okay, Hindu act. They would bring babies, and underneath the babies would be a video camera or some kind of recording instrument wrapped up in swaddling stuff. And
Do you remember when camera phones first were getting popular? They weren't even popular. Very few people had cameras on their camera phones.
Yeah.
Or their cell phones.
Yeah.
And the bands were like, "Don't let him take a picture. Don't let
let-
him."
yeah.
And we're like flashing the flashlight to blow the to make sure the picture didn't take. Or we'd go into the crowd to get somebody's cell phone because it had a camera on it, and like you can't take pictures now.
Now,
it's like
Yeah,
nobody
everyone's
likes
got-
lighters anymore. Everybody
Yeah.
just holds your cell phone. up.
People go to the show.
Like
And
They
don't look at
and
it.
They look at it, and then they go home and watch the show.
Watch the show.
The show was
Yeah.
right there. They could have watched it.
Right.
that's right. That's right.
So,
All right,
People are
folks.
such idiots.
well,
All right.
it's been enjoyable having you here.
Fun.
See you next week. And good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are.